May I stay here?
Good morning. Please silence your cell phones, and I'd like to welcome you back. Doesn't this place look great? Yes. You should have seen it a couple weeks ago. Walls cut out, carpet ripped up, fiberglass insulation out, pews in the other rooms, and I'd like to offer special thanks to everyone who helped put it back together, starting with Wally Milne, who did a fantastic he really pulled out all the stops. Also Fletcher, Deb Evanchek, Phil Elthorpe, Ray Backhurst, Lisa Walsh, Kathy and Davis Folsom, Alan Maddox, and Susan Moore. Thank you all so much, and anybody else I forgot. My name's Marty Saltzman. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees, and I'd like to welcome you to UUCSV. Please take a note of our mission statement, put it on the front of the order of service, and our 8 guiding principles on the back. These are what we UUs are all about, those 8 principles. I'd like to welcome Mary Soyanova back. It's our tradition to welcome first and second time guests, so if you're willing and able, I'd like to ask you to stand and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. Is there anyone over here who's a guest? It's all the home team over here, right? All right, how about on this side? Any guests?
John and Kristen. Yeah, we just moved to Black Mountain during the hurricane.
Great timing. But a good move nonetheless.
My name is Andrew Gentry. My partner's name is John Nielsen. I've heard of the Unitarian Church before. I actually did a wedding in a Unitarian Church. I have to apologize. I have a slight speech impediment because of cancer. It's robbed me by part of my tongue. But I'm alive, I have spirit, I love and am loved, and that's all that matters.
If you'd like to know more about us or receive our newsletter, you can fill out one of these cards. They're either yellow or orange, very bright, and they're in the back of the pews. You can either leave it in the offering basket or leave it on the table in the foyer and somebody will be in touch. Okay, whoops, guess I'm over here. Okay, a couple of announcements. First of all, our order of service, I think the back was pre-printed for the whatever Sunday we closed. So this is pre-hurricane. These calendar events, they've all been changed or canceled. So you will see next week, they'll be updated. So there's no auction, and the climate justice kickoff, which we kind of had that, not the way we expected, has not been canceled, it's just been postponed. So let's see. A couple other things here. There's I got an announcement here from Jim. There's Black Mountain Library's having a Read Local Author Fair next Sunday, 11:10, and a lot of members will be showing their books, so please come. Okay, and finally, I'd like to read our land acknowledgement. UUCSB respectfully acknowledges that the land we are on today is the ancestral home of the Cherokee and other indigenous people that through stewardship, understanding, and conservation survived and continue to thrive in this land. We acknowledge their enduring connection to their homeland. And now, so I don't mess this up. I'm not very good at this. Yes. Let our service begin.
Beautiful.
Last time I dropped it on the floor.
Good morning. It's not often I follow someone shorter than I. Thank you, Diane. Good morning. My name is Susan Enright Hicks, and I have the privilege of serving as this congregation's Director of Religious Education and of reading some opening words to you this morning. I've chosen a prayer by Leslie Takahashi called Prayer for When Words Fail. This is a prayer for when words fail, for when they are not big enough or small enough to slip into the little cracks left in our hearts by life's unbearable pressures. This is a prayer for when the biggest noun cannot know the enormity of joy, or when the most active verb is paralyzed in the face of grief unuttered, horror undescribed, or loss beyond accounting. This is a prayer for when words, precious emblems though they are, cannot take into their embrace the hugeness of experience, or the expanse of indebtedness, or the many tangles of complexity and confusion. This is a prayer for when we must sit with our breath, kneading the small truths we can touch as if they were therapy for our restless hands. This is a prayer for all who've known the large void of hope, which is trauma. This is a prayer for wounded hearts and bodies, for those we ought to always remember and sometimes choose to forget. This is a prayer that begins with gratitude for what we can understand and know, and ends with humility, which reminds us that not all is ours to do. This is a prayer for those times when words fail and all that is left is the yes and the no of it all, and our ability to let the cord of breath lead us from this moment to the next. This is a prayer for all who've been lost in our memory, that in our memory they might be found. May we be the ones who make it so. I'll invite whatever young people might be present currently to walk out with me to the RE space during the next time. The opening hymn, which is number 42, Morning So Fair to See.
I decided to change the responsive reading to 733 in the back of your hand. 733, a place of meeting. We'll read this responsively. Out of wood and stone, out of dreams and sacrifice, the people build a home. Out of the work of their hands and hearts and minds, the people fashion a symbol and a reality.
May this house be truly a place of meeting, meeting one with another in warmth and joy and openness, meeting one with another in courage and love and trust.
May all who enter here trust one another so surely that they dare to share the deep fires that burst into anger as much as the sweet spring waters that dwell into laughter, the slow erosion of wounded tears as much as the soaring song.
May these walls know silence as a hungry heart search inward, each for its own small spark of hope that might otherwise be snuffed out in the noise.
May these rafters hear the voice of the child as surely as that of the orator, and the sound of the lute, the clack of the typewriter, boy, that's an old one, the swish of the broom, maybe we should just say AI, but the swish of the broom, and know that all are as holy as the shout of a million stars.
May the rain fall lightly on this house, the sun shines warmly, the winds blow softly, and bless it as a place of joy and peace.
So this is the time in the service where we invite you to come and drop a stone of joy or sorrow. Yes, everything seems to be in place. I'm sure we have much to reflect on and of course much to talk about. During the sermon time today will be your time to share. And so we'll probably run a little longer than usual. That being said, the floor is yours.
I would like to speak. Can you hear me? I'm just going to. Norris died at Aston Park on the 2nd, in the middle of the storm. We were given flashlights to use inside the bedrooms, and he had his 77th birthday, September 15th. And after that, announced to someone he really cared about there, one of the nurses, that he was finished, done, and he had decided to not eat and not drink. And so he passed on the 2nd of October, just after his family had come to just be with him. They didn't know what was going to happen. They had to go home, on the curfew. And at 7:30, and I was with him. I'd moved in. And so I was there when he passed. And it was both difficult and good. He used to come here. He loved the one, the second song we have scheduled, whatever that is.
Spirit of God.
He loved that. So he loved to sing. I used to sing that to him. Of course, he played his guitar as long as he could. And I would go over there and open the hymnal that I stole and sing and sing songs that I knew. Security. Okay.
before we move on, I'll do that. Can you turn to your hymnal number 720? This is for your husband, Lawrence. Okay. We'll read this in unison. Number 720, we remember them. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for now they are part of us, and we remember them. So I'm going to drop a stone in for those of you who, for whatever reason, decided not to come up. Do I need to bring anybody? Okay. So this is for those of you who keep you in our hearts and minds. I want to share a meditation that I thought we could use. You know, I've talked to people. I was in Ingles talking to someone yesterday who has, survivor guilt because she and her family were relatively unscathed. One of the pervasive things that come up in conversation with people, though, is just a sense of exhaustion. Just tired, and so I want to share this with you from the late Brother John O'Donohue. And this is called For One Who is Exhausted. So I will read this, and we'll have our time of quiet as usual. So center yourselves, as you know how you do, so you do that. For one who is exhausted. When the rhythm of the heart becomes hectic, time takes on the strain until it breaks. Then all the unattended stress falls in on the mind like an endless, increasing weight. The light in the mind becomes dim. Things you could take in your stride before now become more laborsome. Events of the will. Weariness invades your spirit. Gravity begins falling inside you, dragging down every bone. The tide you never valued has gone out, and you are marooned on unsure ground. Something within you has closed down, and you cannot push yourself back to life. You have been forced to enter empty time. The desire that drove you once is now relinquished. There is nothing else you can do now but to rest and patiently learn to receive the self you have forsaken in the race of days. At first your thinking will darken and sadness take over like a listless weather. The flow of unwept tears will frighten you. You have traveled too fast over false ground. Now your soul has come to take you back. Take refuge in your senses. Open up to all the small miracles that you rushed through. Become inclined to watch the way of rain when it falls, slow and free. Imitate the habit of twilight, taking time to open the well of color that fostered the brightness of the day. Draw alongside the silence of stone until its calmness can finally claim you. Be excessively gentle with yourself. Stay clear of those vexed in spirit. I'll read it again. Stay clear of those who are vexed in spirit. Learn to linger around someone of ease who feels they have all the time in the world. Gradually, you will return to yourself, having learned a new respect for your heart and the joy that dwells within the slowness of time. So now, while our minds are one, for this brief moment, I leave you all with the eloquence of silence. And so it is. It's that time in the service for our offering. So I thank you for your generosity, and because of it, so by road, it's time for the offering, it gets to be, it's good to have a rhythm back again and do this. But I also just want to say thank you, not only for your gifts, but the spirit in which you give them. Because it's really about the intentionality, you know what I mean? If you give begrudgingly, then you might as well keep it. And we've all been through a lot, and you still come. You still come. So I don't take that for granted. after Helene, it's a lot of things I don't take for granted. Hopefully, the next Helene comes, I will have learned. So just rise as you are willing and able, and let's do our UU national anthem and do his favorite hymn. As he's here, we put the candle here to acknowledge him, and we'll give him a good send-off and send him love on the next part of his journey. So, Spirit of Life, number 123.
Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Please be seated. So I think we will have the mic come to you. And so the message today is you and your experiences and whatever you choose to share. We've been through a lot, and it's good to gather and see each other's faces. So I think Larry will make sure you get the microphone, and the floor is yours.
I just want to say that living where I do in East Asheville, my community was safe and healthy and very community spirits oriented. But I also learned a new word, guiltitude. Gratitude for all that we got and guilt as survivors guilt. So I just wanted to share guiltitude with all of you.
I am so glad to be back with you all. I was on my way to Asheville on the 21st of September, and I swerved on the freeway, went down over the bank, and at 55 miles an hour, plowed into a tree. I didn't even take my foot off the accelerator. I fractured 16 ribs and 6 pelvic bones and have a slight TBI. However, the people at Mission were wonderful, and they put me in an ambulance and took me to Tennessee, where my daughter is a CNA. Her husband works for a medical supply house. They got me a hospital bed, a commode, a walker, a wheelchair, and took care of me. And I got there the day before Helene hit. So I have healed. I'm 95% in this short a time. Last week I went 16 lengths in the Johnson City swimming pool. So I am so happy to be back here with you.
I want to share the joys that I have felt throughout this, because I've seen so many acts of kindness. I can give you one small example. I was in a shop recently, and one of the workers here, who happened to be from Michigan, was buying a whole lot of things to take back home. He put them on the counter, and the shop owner said, "No, I will not take any money for all you've done. You have this for nothing." And that was just one example, I think, of the people of Black Mountain who have been so kind and generous to the workers that came here. And I also have such gratitude for my neighborhood. Molly and Russ are a part of it. They have been so cohesive. We had meals almost every day. We had any kind of supplies we could get. We had people getting water out of the creek, bringing it to our homes. It was amazing to live there.
I wrote a couple poems about the storm. I need to thank Andy for the first one. Larry, sorry. And Andy. But he introduced me to a quintrain, which is 5 lines, a poem. It's called After the Storm. These days, slowly, surely, we help neighbors and us rebuild our lives lost in the storm again. And a simple haiku I call forever. We help our neighbors in midst of devastation. May this love go on forever. And I write this one for my son, who is at this moment in Japan. Rest easy, beloved son. We worry about you in your time of great want, so far away from home. Jeff, please help this team bring you safely home across the wide Pacific, where you can get help you so desperately need. Be yourself again. We are flying with you in spirit throughout this so long journey home. Rest easy as you travel back to us waiting to hold you again.
There's been a lot said about the artists who lost everything in the River Arts District. And here's one right here. And Winslow had a beautiful studio there. She had things she'd worked on for years and years, mosaics and treasures that she spent untold hours making. So Foundation Studios was, the water just swept through right up to the roof. And when we got there, everything had caved in. The individual studio walls had just been knocked, and everything was upside down and turmoil, and all of it had not that much stinky, mucky mud and slime, and all our beautiful pieces were just lying there. And so we pulled about 10 or 12 out, and they're still sitting in our garage. And this is, I guess, 2 things. One is personal grief for the loss for her and many artists. I mean, there were 80 artists just in Foundation, one building, and then there were all the other buildings. And it's also a community challenge. What's going to happen? Where are they going to go? What's going to happen in the River Arts District? Will it ever be rebuilt? You know, all of these things. So it's all up in the air. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. In a way, I don't know where to begin, but I remember Friday morning, we had power, and then we didn't. We had no water, no internet, no cell service, no TV. To flush our toilets, we went to a nearby stream and gathered water, and we did that for several days. We knew, or had heard, that we were going to have 3 months with no water. So after 5 days, Diane and I decided to take up an offer of a friend of ours who lived in Florida, or had a home in Florida. So with great wisdom, we drove to Venice, sometimes driving 80 miles an hour, which I never do. And after 2 days, we heard about Milton. So Diane and I spent the rest of the time preparing this house that had been lent to us for a storm surge of up to 2 feet, which we didn't get, but we still had, like you, no power, no water, no internet, no TV, no cell phone. Well, we did have cell phones. And our friend wrote a note to the New York Times describing our situation. It ended up on the front page of the New York Times. It says, they fled North Carolina after Helene. Now they are in the crosshairs of another storm. A reporter called and she interviewed me, and I swear within a half an hour, this story was in the New York Times. On the front page. If you know anything about newspapers, above the fold. And then we decided to come back. And here we are.
Well, it's my first hurricane for sure, and I'm just amazed at what it did, just the devastation to the land, to the people, and what everybody's lost. But I too have witnessed just amazing kindness, small, large, huge. One of my darkest moments was I didn't sleep much, but I stayed in my truck by where my horse and mini horse and goat are because they're by a stream. So the stream was getting higher and higher and higher and higher. And I ran home at 7 to let my dogs out, and I couldn't get back. So there were like trees and power lines down over 3 different routes to get there, and I was hearing about how streams were becoming ravines and lakes, and you know, I didn't know what to expect, so I just prayed and I tried all day, all 3 routes, and I finally put my truck in 4-wheel drive and drove over a small tree to get there, and they were fine. I mean, the stream did flood. I had opened the barn and I put their coats on them because the rain was coming down in torrents, and my horse's coat had blown off, and the miniature horse his coat was hanging like a scarf from him, and they came running to me and I went running to them, and they just kind of looked at me like, what the heck just happened? I was like, I know it's all our first hurricane, but I carried water from the stream and messed up my knee, and I have an inner ear thing that causes dizziness, so there were some dark nights by candlelight. The room was spinning by candlelight, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But I went, and you know, everywhere people are cooking hot food for you, and I was without electric and water for 10 days. So having something hot was amazing, and they were cooking hot dogs, and you know, at first I thought, I don't eat hot dogs, you know what's in those things. And I had to laugh and say, it's a hurricane, who cares what fillers are in hot dogs? I mean, here are these kind people lovingly preparing food, and the hot dog was just delicious. It was so delicious. So I wrote a poem. It's called Hope and Hot Dogs. Never has a hot dog meant so much, or carried such seeds of hope, now deeply planted, taking root in my heart, in my belly, to grow, to sustain, to remember these days, these long, dark days of heroes and heroines holding each other up when the world fell apart, who rose to meet death, life, water, mud, a hurricane of human kindness rising with relentless compassion, wave after wave after wave. Now I know that whatever comes, be it strong, be it dark, be it fearful, a hurricane of humanity will rise to meet it, no matter what. And love and compassion will seize the day. So now, yeah, for me, hope and hot dogs spring eternal.
Well, I was home in my co-housing community when the hurricane hit, and little did I dream that the rain I was watching come down so fast and so deep, and all the wind was it was just kind of interesting to start with. And anyway, I was like everybody else without anything, and my daughters had just moved into an apartment complex off of Edgewood and Merriman Avenue. And so I was worried, so like a mother, I drove across town, and it was on Patton Avenue. It was really interesting to see how people were really courteous to each other, and they gave, you know, there were no lights, and they gave way and took turns driving and waiting in kind of the same pattern that they had been doing. So that was interesting. And then I got to where my daughter was, and 4 people met me as I got out of the car and said, "Your daughter's fine, it's okay." Well, my daughter was not happy that I had gone across town. But it was so neat to see the way the community there, just an apartment complex. Oh, by the way, she watched a tree. She watched it. She called 911 because she was on her porch when she first was there, as it went down and crushed the upper story of another apartment building. Fortunately, people were downstairs. But people were out using hibachis or grills or anything they had to boil water for each other, to cook food for each other. And in that whole little apartment complex, it was just real interesting. And I'm sure that's what happened in lots of neighborhoods and places, the way people came together to help each other. And so I went home and promised I wouldn't drive across town again until there were lights.
I'm just going to read something I wrote 2 or 3 days after it hit. Helene, I misjudged you. Got up that morning and I took time for a walk. Oh, sure, your rain was coming down in sheets and your wind howled. Branches and limbs crashed down around us, suggesting strongly that I return to the house after just a block and let time pee in the house if necessary. But still, I didn't think you were so bad. Certainly no worse than the tornado that came through earlier this year. Even when I saw the big trees down in my neighborhood. Even when the power went out. Even when I realized we had no water. Even when I couldn't get on the internet or get a cell signal. Even then, I didn't recognize who you were. Surely they will get power, water, internet, and cell service back up in a day or 2. Surely this is just a little inconvenience. After all, I'm safe. My house is whole. I can get by on the food I have at hand. I can drink juice and soda for a few days. All is well, and they will fix it. Then I ventured out of my neighborhood. I saw roads and bridges gone, houses and businesses crushed, vehicles blown around like toys. I heard the stories of people stranded, homeless, dead. Then I saw the monster that you were, Frankenstein's monster, the monster that we created.
Hi, I live between Black Mountain and Swannanoa, and so in the Swannanoa area, I saw a lot of devastation. There are just neighborhoods that are gone. But I was really touched by all of the people that came from all over the country that were back there trying to find trapped people, cooking food, bringing supplies. But my favorite is the Cajun Navy. I love them now. They were camping down the street from my house, and every time I went out of the neighborhood, I would drive by their campground, and they were these big, gigantic guys. They were hairy and cute. They had these big trucks and these big four-wheelers and all these big things. They were going back and saving people, and they would party at night, you know, and I was just so happy to have those big giant guys with big giant trucks right down the street, and I just felt very touched that they came to help us, along with all the other people. So I think humans might not be so bad after all. So.
Hi, I'm Nancy, and I'm one of those artists from the River Arts District. And I work in watercolor and mixed media, and it comes from spirit, what the work that I do. So I was showing at Trackside on Depot Street and at Marquee, and my work was totally swept away. No, nothing left. About 30 pieces of art. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
From the deeply meaningful to the very trite. David said this was too silly to share, but I'm going to do it anyway. We were walking around dazed and confused on day 2 or 3, I'm not sure which. Out behind our house, a throng of neighbors gathered at the corner, clutching their $1,000 phones, useless, gazing, dazed. All of a sudden, here comes Sue Cannon with a 1984 transistor radio. We extended that antenna, we put it in a salad bowl, and we were connected.
Sue was in Thailand the whole time, and I didn't sleep at all that night. I felt an energy in the air that scared me. I've been in a lot of storms in my life, been in hurricanes in Florida, and I felt a sense of danger that I'd never felt before. Via satellite phone, Sue got on the phone with me Friday morning when the storm peaked, and we're talking, and I'm sitting on the front porch, which has a roof over it. I spent the whole night listening to the storm and hearing trees fall all night long. And I said to Sue, wait a minute, and there was a tree falling across my neighbor's yard. And then she said, how's the creek? And I went out the back door just as a tree fell right across the back steps as I was about to go out. And the creek was raging. And we were trapped in our neighborhood. We live in a little holler in Swannanoa. And after 2 days, we were able to get out. And I took a walk over to the Black Mountain Children's Home. And that's when I understood why I felt a sense of danger, because there was a major debris flow. They said 4,000 feet long, started up the top of the mountain. And it culminated in the cabins and the dining hall and the residential area of Black Mountain Children's Home. And half the cabins were wiped away. Half the dining room was torn to shreds. And it was just massively cleared and piled up. And then the next day I went into Swannanoa after the river was tamed and back in its banks, and walked and looked at debris 15 feet above my head in the trees. And every time, here it is 6 weeks later, every time I leave my house where we're safe and relatively frickin' normal, gratefully so, and we go back into the valley for whatever, and it's like, it's a whole different dimension of time and space when you go back into the flood zone. It's going to take so long. But because Sue was gone, I bonded with our cat really, really well. Much more so than ever would have happened if Sue was still home. No offense, darling. So now me and the cat are buddies. And if you take a 5-gallon bucket of water and put in some clothes and a little soap and a garden hoe from the shed and plunge it up and down, it makes a good washing machine. Or so I thought, because the next day when my clothes dried out, I tried them on and I had silt falling all through them. But grateful and grateful and grateful for everything from every perspective.
I was born and grew up in the eastern part of the state. My family has had a beach house for many, many years. I've been through lots of hurricanes, and I have stood in a building with water going up my legs as we were trying to get up to higher ground. So, you know, we were prepared. I was at Myrtle Beach when Helene came because I was there for a family reunion in the beach house that my family used to own. And on the day of the storm, I was watching the Weather Channel, so I knew things were bad if the Weather Channel was in Asheville. But what struck me, I'm standing outside, blue skies, sunny temperatures, fabulous October beach day, and it just struck me that there was this huge hurricane disaster here and nothing at the beach. The world is different. The world is different. And that was something I've never experienced in 76 years, and I'm sure most of you have not either. But I will say that I was proud of my city and my county and all the people in it and all the good things that were said about how people came together to support each other through something that was horrific and unexpected for everybody. Larry?
Yeah, why don't we just ride this wave out?
So my name is Elizabeth, and I live in a large apartment complex. The reason I moved into it was because it had so many big old trees. And it was very landscaped. And I live in a top apartment. So when I woke up that morning, what I could see outside was this, because it's like living in a treehouse, I could see the swaying of these green leaves across the sky, and it was remarkably horrifying and beautiful. And so then when it started to get quiet, I did a debate that I know a lot of us must have done. I stood in front of my door and calculated when it would be safe to open the door without the wind. And I went outside, and it had been quiet for a while, and in our parking lot there were huge amounts of trees that had landed on the cars, landed on some roofs and knocked through them. But in the middle of the road were 7 young, hardy men with axes. And the wood had gone up higher than their heads, and they were chopping. And for 5 or 6 hours, they took turns and shifts chopping to make a way through to a path. And when they got all done, it was amazing to watch. They just worked quietly, and one would stop and pass the axe to another. And then finally, one of them started knocking on apartment doors because there was a big truck next to the pile, and they were looking for who owned the truck. They found the man who owned the truck, and he walked out, and he had his hands holding his 3-year-old daughter. And they got into the truck, and they had those great big yellow strips, you know, that the truckers use, and they pulled to the side of the road the logs. But what I'll never forget is the 3-year-old little girl, still in her princess nightgown, standing next to her dad as he pulled all those huge trucks, and her eyes were like this. And I knew in my heart I would always be that 3-year-old girl.
Hey, my name's Leif. I was actually staying in North Asheville around the time that the storm happened. I decided to leave and stay with my girlfriend at the time. And no, I don't know. I underestimated, just like the poem that was shared. Didn't expect anything that happened. And clutching a $1,000 cell phone that is completely worthless is one of the strangest experiences I think I've ever had. I grew up in Illinois where we had tornadoes. Those are nothing. Times about 100 is what that felt like. The devastation, the loss, I mean, it racked my heart. And I finally found a place in near Swannanoa where I could get service. And on Sunday, after the storm, I finally got text messages from my aunt that my mom was in the ER. She was being put into the ICU, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't leave, I couldn't go anywhere, roads are closed, and I had to sit with the loss of all of that. And the next week I went to be with my mom. I got her settled in, she's doing okay. But the amount of exhaustion that you shared, the amount of overwhelming aspects of it all. What really kept me through it all was the spiritual connection I have and the ability of using intuition. That's the only thing that was my guiding light and path. Otherwise I would have quit, gave up. So I have a lot of gratitude for the love that I received from everyone around me and seeing the community work itself back and give everything they can. But yeah, the waves of grief are going to keep coming, and it was an experience I don't think I ever expected. But I am gracious to be here.
I would just like to mention, what was astounding to me is the people that I met that came to help, that weren't from government organizations. And by the way, I think the government did a great job. And beyond that, the people that came from Kentucky, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Alaska, Maine, that came down to help. And some were with church groups, some were just, I met a couple from Louisiana. I was at Bilo's and I saw these people with trailers and I went to help them distribute. And the guy told me a story and he and his wife looked at each other. Louisiana, they know a little bit about hurricanes. And they said, look, let's just throw some water and food in our car, drive up there, see if we can help somebody. And they mentioned it to a neighbor, who mentioned it to a neighbor who was an electrician. He said, I got a trailer, I'll clear out all my stuff, we can use that. And then it got into the news, and then a car dealership there said, we'll donate a truck and a trailer. And then people started coming from everywhere. They had 3 trailer loads of everything you could imagine. And they just drove up to stay as long as it took to give all that stuff away. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
What we're all talking about, of course, is loss. There's no way that we could be emotionally, physically, spiritually prepared for what happened. And what we have to do, I think, in the healing process is to acknowledge our fear, our anxieties, our guilt. I was asked in Swananoa, where John and I live, to give some kind of summation, if that's possible. I'm 77, I'm a clergyman, so I'm a ham, so forgive me, I talk too much. But I told, this is the way I see it. Life has lamentations. And the Hebrew word is a very powerful word. We have lamentations in life, and this is the time of lamentation. But we have hallelujahs. The lamentations last only a season, but the hallelujahs last forever. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Michelle, and I am a new member of this particular community, and what I want to talk about is community. Once the tree got cut from my passageway, the only place I could go was east, so I live in Old Fort. And I headed east, not knowing anyone in Charlotte except for a friend of a friend, and I landed for a couple of days at this friend's house. And there were 3 different communities that I connected with. And I'm going to talk about this one, the UU community in Charlotte. And I was so lovingly received, and every community that I was in mentioned our condition here, and to give generously, and to hold this area in their thoughts, in their prayers. And I just want to say how very honored I am to be a part of this community. And it's my 66th birthday today. And I'm just really, really happy to be here in community and to have experienced community in Charlotte and not having known anyone. And people are people are good. People are loving. People do care.
In the same vein, I just want to add that Larry and I left for a few days and went to Durham with my son, and we went to the service at the Eno River UU, where they welcomed us with open arms, announced our situation, did a plate collection, part of the Share the Plate UU. I don't know whether you realize that that went on the last month, that all the UU churches in the southeastern region did a Share the Plate. The UUA has been wonderful. They had a disaster fund relief who came up with money for us to cover this flooding costs and putting the church back together. And and the people I spoke to on the phone were just so kind and so understanding and really, really supportive and helpful. So sometimes we complain or grouch about the UUA, but they were wonderful, just wonderful.
Hi, I'm Sue. Like you mentioned earlier, I was in Thailand. You know, what I'm trying to say, climate change is real. It's over there. When I first got there, the news, every day I turn on television. They have flood from the mountain of Thailand, village, under the water. A lot of people die. The store full of mudslide. It's all over. And from China down to Burma to Thailand, a lot of people die. And I just watch that news every day. I didn't expect to happen in Suvarnabhumi. I never expect until when I talked to you on Friday morning, he says, storm came. Okay, I still didn't expect that's going to be this bad. And then I lost contact with you. I didn't know what happened. So the next day, I watched the news in Thailand. They says Western North Carolina got hit by the storm and a lot of people died. And I said, oh no, I have to find you. And so I'm just trying to say climate change is real. And we have to be aware of that. And I think after I left, Philippines got hit with the storm too. And a lot of people died. So.
Alice and I got a close-up look at some of these, or at least one of these acts of kindness that several people have mentioned. Our granddaughter is working on a farm in Massachusetts owned by some people with an Asheville connection. Long story short, they got a GoFundMe page started, raised $30,000. Our granddaughter and two other women flew down to Atlanta, rented 2 big box trucks, filled them with generators, tools, anything else they could think of, and drove up to Barnardsville, Burnsville, all the hardest hit areas. When they had emptied their trucks, they bought more stuff and went to more places, and it was just heartwarming to see that and to know that we had a personal connection to that effort.
Yeah, so we were in the process of thinking we might move to this area. We've been traveling around for about 3.5 years in a travel trailer. And so we were in the KOA, just down the road here, so Valley. And yeah, so I continually feel lucky, like we lost our RV, but we were like in the part of it that would have just we would have lost the trailer completely. But we did decide to move, which is, we travel like 2 weeks at a time. I don't like to move. But I did it. And, you know, he said, oh, we've had hurricanes here before. It's never hit this area. Okay. But yeah, and then at like 3 a.m. we got the, you need to evacuate. And I had no clue where to go, really. We went to Old Fort. And I was like, but, because I went that way, because I was like, well, there's a mountain in between. And then I'm like, oh, but now I'm in Old Fort. This doesn't feel a lot higher than where I was. So I turned around and I thought, well, the Blue Ridge Parkway, I'd seen that was here. I know. And while we were trying to get there with Google Maps, it took us down a road that was closed, like there was a gate across it and stuff. And it's like, oh man. So anyway, I drove up as high as I could get in that area, and we stayed in a parking lot there. It was a church. And woke up the next day, and I work online, and I started working. We still had Verizon service. And then, about, 10, 11 o'clock, thought, well, we should go check on our trailer. And went down and just, went to a Waffle House, which was open, but didn't have electricity or anything. And got some coffee and stuff, and watched the river, watched homes going under the bridge and all sorts of stuff. But then finally went to RV and found out it was ruined. And so I guess, we thought, well, let's just go north. It seemed like the way to go for a hurricane, not to go south or whatever. So that didn't work. And at that point, it's like, well, we shouldn't just keep wasting gas. So we came back to this area, and we were just going to spend, like the third night in our truck. And some people came to check on their trailer. It was so weird because maybe 100 feet away from where our trailer got ruined, there was a whole bunch of trailers, and they didn't. And it doesn't even look different. I don't get it, but somehow all those trailers or RVs were spared. But some people saw us just kind of basically camped out along 70 there. And they found us an Airbnb that they knew somebody who had it. And so we stayed there. But then the next night, and these guys were preppers. They had a whole house, generator. He was having the gun on his hip and everything, But they offered to let us stay in their. They have an RV. It was in their driveway, and they let us stay there for a couple of nights. While we figured out, well, okay, I think our house here is still okay. That maybe we're going to rent, and so we signed the lease, and we're here.
We moved here 7 years ago, and we knew we loved it here. And a couple of days after the hurricane, the fire chief, I said, what can we do? And he said, leave. And we tried. And we were gone 3 days. This is not just a nice place where we retired. This is home. And we had to come back. And we don't regret that. And we came back and we found a way to be helpful. So John, this is home. You just know it when you know it. Even on the worst day after the hurricane or on a beautiful day like this. And not just Black Mountain. Western North Carolina is home. And we're in it together. And we will get through it. And when you're coming up I-40, right around the Lake James exit is when you can really see the mountains. And there's no doubt in my mind, forever, this is home. Thank you.
Avoid persons vexed in spirit. Ever since Michael said that, I've been wondering how I can avoid myself. It has been an awful year with my wife's Parkinson's and her pneumonia and her gallbladder infection and her cascading dementia. But what I want to talk about is the most extraordinary bright spot, and her name is Allie. She's a chosen daughter. Since January, it's been kind of developing our expanding friendship. And some of you who know me knows I had a chosen daughter years ago named Emily. Died at age 16 in an auto accident. And that was years ago, and I'm well past the pain and mostly just astounded and grateful that that ever happened. So unexpected, so extraordinary. A one-off, and that could never happen again. Well, it did. And day after the storm, Allie, who lives in Candler, couldn't get a hold of us. No internet, no phone, no nothing. So she got in her car and she drove from Candler. Took her an hour and a half, which normally takes half an hour. Came to the first bridge in Swannanoa across the river, and it was closed and largely washed out. She took the second bridge near Asheville Christian Academy, threaded her way down the one-lane road. The other lane was occupied by a mobile home that had landed there. Drove up our hill about halfway, got out of the car, forded the stream. That's the road we live on, water gushing down it. Climbed over fallen trees and around trees. A couple of teenage girls in the neighborhood showed her their path for getting up the hill. I was in my basement at the time. She came tapping at the door. I don't know why she was so tentative about it. I thought it was a neighbor, but had many. So I went to the door and I saw her through the glass. I don't do tears of joy, but my God, I was so pleased to see her. She stayed with us for the day. She helped me cut up trees that had fallen across our driveway. We didn't have a tree hit our house. We had a landslide miss our house by 30 feet, threaded between our house and the neighbor's house, and completely buried the road in trees and boulders and mud. And last Sunday, Allie went with me to Owen Park, one of our favorite places. So many times we walked and talked there, and there's a path that goes up the Swannanoa River on Warren Wilson land. It is my favorite place, and it is utterly and completely destroyed. And I knew I had to see it. I was expecting the worst, lots of trash, and it'll get cleaned up. Didn't know that it would be obliterated. But I didn't want to see it alone, so I went with Allie. And we walked together, and it's just completely unrecognizable. And even 3 miles from Swannanoa proper, there's wreckage there, obviously from homes, children's toys and things just by the riverside. So I have this chosen daughter, and it's just extraordinary. It has happened again. I don't know what I did to deserve it. That's not to say I'm not vexed. Oh, I'm vexed. I'm still vexed. But I'm also blessed. And that includes all of you. Thank you.
Please rise as you are willing and able, and join in our closing hymn, number 207. Earth was given as a garden.
Tree of life.
some love. I want to thank all of you for coming back out, and it truly is good to see all of you. Before the closing words, I just want to remind us of this, and Sue, I'm glad you reminded us. You know, human beings have been doing this since we've been on the planet. Whether there were tectonic shifts or continental divides or earthquakes, and that's what we do, and some of us don't make it through. Who knows? Next time, maybe I don't or you don't, but you grieve and you move on. And I say that so you can remember that when people being good to each other kind of surprises us, that's something to look at. And it may not just be us, we're not programmed to look at that, you know. But when people being kind surprises you, we know we have work to do. Because of those who came before, we are. And in spite of their failings, we believe. And because of, and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too still dream. Have a wonderful afternoon.